Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here is the host of The Pleasure Zone, sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and holistic health practitioner, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. Have you ever in your life had a thing where you've, kind of thought about it, put it out to the world, kept thinking about it, and then finally came the day that you got to actually do it? Well, that's this episode. And it's funny because I have been, on the pleasure zone for over 10 years, over 400, 500 episodes. We stopped counting, right, guys? Like, it's been a lot of episodes. And there was something about this episode that just kept on going, nope, nope. And now tonight it was like, oh yeah, we're diving in. We're going to have fun with this. And I think part of it was just having the energy of springtime more in the air. I don't know where you live in the world, but we've had this like false spring that happened. I'll call it false spring. It's like we had a day where it was warm, and then all of a sudden we had ice storms, and we had all this stuff going on, and it was like crazy things happening. And then finally, it's like today, it was beautiful outside. I think it was like, I don't know, it was like 14 degrees or something. It was beautiful out. And everything just felt calm. And so why not, when your nervous system is calm, why not start talking about things that are incredibly healing and fun and exciting? And that is what this episode is about. Are you curious and kinky? I'm just wondering. If you are, you probably have tapped into this episode specifically because you are curious and kinky. And if you are curious about exploring different things, your different desires, then, we have 506 unique episodes, guys. That's where we're at. Holy smokins. That's really cool. And I got a little sidetracked by that coolness. So if you are curious and you are a little kinky and you're not sure, maybe you're curious and wondering if you are kinky, I have to say this show is going to be fun for you because personally, until about maybe 10 to 12 years ago, I probably would have run for the hills when somebody would suggest something that would have been in line with anything that would be anything with bondage. There was a lot of things that scared me because I still was recovering from a lot of trauma. And I'd been working diligently at doing different things to recover from trauma. So it wasn't that I had just sat there and let the trauma take over my life. I was working on things. I was doing all kinds of different energy work. I was doing hypnotherapy. I don't even know, so much stuff, art therapy, you name it. I was really diving deep and trying to find joy in my body. And I didn't really know what that was. And I also realized that I probably had never truly felt safe in my body. And it took having the person that I'm married to now, my husband of, it'll be 10 years in December. It took having him in my life to realize that my nervous system could calm down. And when my nervous system calmed down, that I felt secure, I felt safe, for the best word. And that safe allowed my brain in my body to feel more able to explore and get creative. Now, I would say that my husband is in the realm of being more vanilla than kinky. However, he is willing to accommodate me. That comes down to communication, right? So it was one of actually the guests on this show named Gaia Morissette, who has been on several times. So if you're not aware of her, she does have her own podcast. You can check her out. I think it's called My Orgasmic Life. She's on different places like FetLife and things like that to find her. And she had mentioned that kink wasn't really what I thought it was. And I was like, fascinating. Tell me more. And the more, I think what I had learned about kink was all things that I had maybe seen in movies or references. I have to say, I've hardly watched any porn in my whole life, which is kind of funny as somebody who's like, this is my work. But I don't find porn to be educational, and I don't really learn anything from it other than, I know that sounds weird, why people don't watch porn to learn, but some people do. Surprisingly, some people think that those are things that you need to take note and do. No, porn is not education. It's entertainment. So when I'm looking at like what I was learning and what I was uh, gaining information on from her, information about like kink is not what I thought it was. And then she gave me some references to go check out. And that was really helpful. And also in that the work that she does as she's a pro dom, but she also does sexual wellness. And some of that work has to do with using bondage for healing. And I'm fascinated by her work, and I've actually taken a course with her on that. And there is such a difference between using kink for healing and kink for curiosity or play in a different way, more of in line with probably what most people think kink is. However, the key to all kink is that there's consent. Always, that's key. And I think curiosity is key as well. I think kinking with all things in life, curiosity is key, but also I think communication is key as well. So and safety, like so to be able to have communication, consent, curiosity, but then all those feelings that I was talking about, having those energies in place where you feel safe, where your body can unwind, and then utilizing it for different reasons. So on this show, I think one of the things to just know is that there are absolutely misconceptions about kink. I think most misconceptions are probably similar to the misconceptions that I had, which was my thoughts were this is dangerous. I could die. This is scary. The person will hold me hostage. And that all came from my own traumas that I didn't feel like I had a say. So if I didn't have a say before, why would I have a say now? But that's when it gets really helpful to have somebody that is somebody that you trust and that you trust you with them. So if, if we look at these misconceptions that kink is dangerous, you could die, it's unsafe, all kink is perverted and disgusting. I think that's for some people, they also think that as well. And maybe like, if I say to you, top 5 things that pop into your head when I say the word kink, what would they be? And so for me, if I had said that to me 10 years ago, it would have been like gimp suits, it would have been chains, it would have been tied up in a dungeon somewhere where I couldn't escape. There would be some kind of violation of my body happening, and probably I would feel tortured at the end. And none of those were things that I desired. So, and none of those were things that I felt like I would have had a say in. So, if my misconceptions were huge, and they're just like in anything, though, there can be that extreme. There is extreme play. But if you are just curious about kink, we're not talking about you going from never having experienced any, say, form of bondage or sensory deprivation or anything like that, to going all the way into being like locked in a closet for a weekend, tied up. Like we're not going from one situation to another. We're looking at how do you invite these ideas into your life if they're things you're curious about. And I think one of the things to do is to check in with yourself first. Check in with the level of comfort you had. And like I was saying, I probably, even though it's kind of ironic, being that my husband is quite vanilla, probably if he said to me, "Can I do A, B, C, or D to you and your body?" I would say yes, because I feel safe with him. And the irony is, he wouldn't ask for something that I wasn't comfortable with. It's just not in his nature. So I think that a lot of times, if that's something that you do want and you don't have a partner who will ask for that, you need to be able to bring up the conversation. And sometimes it's as simple as, "Hey, you know what I'd really like to try this time is, can you just like spank my butt?" Because I mean, I like a good paddling. I don't know if you do, but if you happen to like a good paddling, you might want to start with something that small, with just having some butt spanks. Get your cheeks rosy, get them happy, get them going. And they can be, during your play or not. Always consent to this, right? So having this conversation in advance and saying, "You know what I would really like is to try this." You know, what you might find too is that it can be super arousing. So, where maybe it took your body a little while longer to get to arousal before, but then all of a sudden you throw in some kinky fun play, and now you've got some spanking happening in your body, because there are so many nerve endings that go from like your bum cheeks and just below your bum cheeks all the way in to your genitals. Like, and if you have a clitoris, you've got 8,000 nerve endings now being fired off, basically, just from spanking. So your body can get highly aroused just from something as simple as a very, even, it doesn't even have to be an aggressive paddling, but just like a tap enough that you get a little sting, a little pink, and it doesn't have to be extreme in any way. Sometimes the noise will sound more extreme than the actual hit feels, and kind of like the slap sound. It's kind of fun. Now, where before I would say I wouldn't be prepared for it, and it probably would have set my nervous system off to a place of fear. And yeah, it would have probably been quite aggravating. So it is helpful to have somebody who can either guide you through, help you through, that maybe does have experience or can give you some tips to work with your partner, if you have a partner, or tips that you can do for you personally, if that's something that you want to try and you want to be safe about it. It's really important that when we talk about physical safety, as well as emotional safety and all the other safeties that we could include, to make sure that those are in place. So when we want to also look at kink as something that is, even in those extreme circumstances, I was talking about like being put in a closet for a weekend where you're being tied up, or you're being on a St. John's cross and being hung there for like 5 hours straight. Those are all because you consent to them, even though they may seem really extreme. Those would all be things that you absolutely need to consent to. And whoever you're working with or playing with also needs to know the rules of conduct and what you're willing to accept or not accept. And also, what are the safe words, right? So communication being key, especially in kink. You want to have your safe words. And some of the standards are just like the lights. You got your green light, you got your yellow light, you got your red light. So if things are getting a little out of your comfort zone, you might go, "Okay, I'm in the yellow zone, yellow." Or, if things have really hit from one extreme to another and things were going good and then bam, they go red, just say red, red. And hopefully the person that you're with is honorable and will honor that you've said your safe words. So you want to take these things into practice first on things that aren't so scary. Like maybe just have your ankles tied up and then practice seeing if your partner hears you, so that you could undo yourself if they don't, right? And practice and see if your husband or your partner, sorry, hears you, or partners, plural, and whether they respond to your safe words. So it's good to practice safe words in advance. before you go for the big play. You can practice your safe words. You can practice safe words for everything if you want. Conversations are good to have safe words as well. So when we look at kink, a lot of times I think the misconception is that kink is very scary and that it's that extreme that we see in maybe movies or different concepts that have been put out there in books like 50 Shades of Grey, that sort of stuff. However, kink is definitely on a spectrum, and so is being vanilla. Vanilla is on a spectrum too. Even when you look at vanilla ice cream, you can see so many different shades of what vanilla ice cream can look like. Very stark white to like a little bit of yellow with speckles of vanilla bean in there. Like vanilla can be very, it can vary, right? And so can kink. So just know there is a spectrum of sexuality, absolutely, just like there's a spectrum of everything. Nothing is really concrete black and white. So, and nothing is that binary. Nothing is binary, truly, actually. So yeah, we're going to talk about some things on how you can play with just getting started. We're going to talk about that when we come back from this commercial break. You're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. I bet you're a little bit curious. I bet you're a little bit kinky if you are tapping in on this episode where we're asking the question, are you curious? Are you kinky? Chances are that if you're listening, you are, or if you've been handed this by a friend or, a lover, then they might be a little kinky and wanting to open conversation with you. And by all means, guys, if you don't know how to open the conversation, send this to your lover to start the conversation. They'll either start to listen and go, oh no, that's scary. Or they'll say, hey, you know what, that's curious. I'm curious about what what sort of things you'd like to try. Now, if you're not really sure what you'd like to try, what you can do is head over to my website, milicajelenic.com. That's my name, MILICAJELENIC.com. And on my homepage, you will find my yes, no, maybes list, where it gives you, you can kind of segment off the things you really want to do, you really don't want to try, and the things you might be considering. And the list itself is fairly vanilla, but it does have a little bit of other additional things added to it. I will be getting a more kinky list out there in the near future. And what you can do is do combinations of things with that list. You can add to it if you like. You can just use it as a starting ground for a conversation. So you can fill it in. You can print off 2 copies, give one to your partner, and you can exchange lists to start a conversation. Now, if you are starting a conversation and you're not sure how to navigate it, or the conversation is going sour and you don't know how to talk about it, I am a sex and intimacy coach, and you can contact me as well through my website. You can book a time. We can get on a call. We can go through your list. Also, if there are other things you want to talk about, as I might have brought a few things up in the first segment about why I was hesitant with any kind of kink, concepts of kink for a very long time, because of, having violations to my body. That is something that I also work with. I do work with people, giving them different tools for getting trauma out of your body, whether it's through movement or breath or sound, or you name it, so many different methods. Sometimes it's just a conversation to just get it moving. So now we know that kink is on a spectrum, vanilla is on a spectrum. And sometimes if you look at it as a Venn diagram, there are things that might overlap. So Venn diagrams are those circles where, the circles meet in the middle, for those of you who maybe are trying to figure out what is a Venn diagram. So the circles overlap, and then there's usually qualities that overlap somewhere in the middle, somewhere between, and that's where we get that spectrum of sexuality going on. Somewhere there's this middle stuff that's quite shared, that some people might consider vanilla, but other people might consider kink. So things that we really need to be clear on is that kink is not just about pain, right? And that is one of the things that comes up a lot in conversations, is that, the first thought is kink equals pain. And kink doesn't have to equal pain at all, actually. Kink can be a lot of different things. So as I mentioned, different sensory play. So whether that's having, feathers going up and down your body, or different textures of different things, just like the touch blueprint work from Jaya. She goes through all the different 5 kinds of touch. And I don't know if it's evolved since I took the sex and intimacy course or not, but you never know. People are always adding things over time. So there was 5 types of touch. Maybe there's more now. Things like role play are also kink, and they don't involve pain. Things like even just like power exchanges, like you might have somebody who you just have become your cleaning person for your house. They just come over and clean and cook for you, and there you go. And that is a form that can be used as a form of kink as well. If you're getting really aroused by it, then that can be a form of kink. Role play, especially with things that are like teacher student roles, that sort of stuff, that's really common, as the power exchange and a role play throwing in all at the same time. And we want to make sure that anything that you're doing when it comes to kink, especially in your first explorations, is to be clear on things that you are willing to explore at this time, right? And it can change over time. And I would suggest very simple things like sensory play or role play to just kind of get the ball rolling, or something very simple like even tying your own ankles up with, and get good rope that's soft and nice, unless you like scratchy rope, but I'm all for like soft rope. So tie up your own ankles and see how you feel. And then, maybe get your partner or partners to tie up your ankles and see how you feel. Because you're edging into it, you're not going to just jump in, and that can be traumatizing if you do that. So you want to make sure that you're going in at a pace that you're comfortable with. So there's a term called safe, sane, and consensual. So that's really important with anything. Well, it's really important in life to be safe, sane, and consensual with relationships and sex, but it is something that comes out, especially with kink. and kink play. And so the other things you need to be aware of is how risky are the things you're doing. So there's also the risk aware consensual kink. So that's RAC for short, risk aware consensual kink. This is that if you do know, say you like autoerotic asphyxiation or erotic asphyxiation, and you know that being choked could kill you, then you're aware of the risk and you've agreed to it. When you're going to extremes like choking, I would suggest that you get written agreements, because I think there's, there are times where people actually die from that. Oh, am I allowed to say that word? They get unalived. I don't know how to edit that. They may become unalived, and so you want to make sure that you're being safe, right? So you got to make sure that you're in the zone of play that's going to keep you alive. So one of the things that I talk about a lot, right? I always mention consent, curiosity, communication, not always in those same orders, but I do mention them a lot. And curiosity to me is like the door that opens to our pleasure possibilities. And then consent is saying yes to those doors that open. And then communication helps those get built and created and explored, right? So you could have curiosity, you could open that door, but then if you don't communicate what you desire, then the door is open, but nothing is happening. And then if you do communicate what you desire, but your partner doesn't consent to it, it's not going to happen, right? So you kind of need this triad to happen. You need the door to be open, and you need to be able to walk through, proceed, and have it happen. So opening the doors to curiosity, it can be like really anything that floats your boat. Curiosity can bring you into all kinds of things. So there's something I say to people when they come to me for coaching, and they're like, yeah, no, I'll try anything. And I will throw out stuff that they have never thought about. And they're like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. I'm like, yeah, so you actually won't do anything. So let's get clear on your do's, don'ts, maybes. Let's get clear that maybe you're not into corpophilia, or maybe you're not into certain kinks that are mucky and messy. Maybe you're not into that. So that can go off the list. That's something that you would say no to. And maybe you're not into asphyxiation. So maybe you'd say no to that. So we need to get curious enough to know what exists. Also, sometimes you go, maybe create your own curiosity kinks as well that maybe nobody's explored yet. And the thing is, when people do come for coaching and we make these lists, I say like anything can be a kink. And I don't think I've come across anything yet that is not or could not become a kink if it's not already been given a name as a kink. Can literally be anything. You could be turned on by the smell of pine trees, and like Christmas time in the mall parking lot smelling pine trees is like the horniest time of your life because you love the smell of fresh cut pine. Could be, right? It could be your thing. So again, it can be anything. And curiosity is so powerful because it helps you learn about yourself. It helps you learn about your partner, helps you open doors to things you've never tried. For example, like until I tried being spanked, I had no idea how great it was. I would have just thought it was like, oh, I'm not into that. I don't want anybody to be the boss of me or to be dominant over me. Though I do like to be dominant. When a body feels safe, generally speaking, if a body feels safe, it's okay to be submissive. But if a body doesn't feel safe, generally, they don't go into that zone of wanting to be all that submissive. There's like alarm bells that will go off and the body won't relax enough to really receive the experience. So how can we use curiosity to open the doors of our pleasure potential? And there are so many ways, guys. I'm going to leave that question with you. And we're going to come back. When we come back, we're going to explore how curiosity can expand our pleasure potentials with lots of different playful ideas on how to do that. So you're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Just before the break, we were talking about curiosity and how do we start to expand our pleasure through curiosity. Let's take it down to like the very fundamentals. Like the very first time you had a sexual experience, and I'm not saying sex, but a sexual experience, or say like an experience that aroused you sexually, that was consensual. So the first time I was 5 and I consented to a kiss on a rocking chair although I was 5, I was 4, he was 5, I was 5, he was 6, whatever it was, there was an age difference and it was significant. Sitting on a little rocking chair type thing, like it was a rocking boat for 4, and he sat beside me and he gave me a kiss and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of into this. And I think we were starting kissing each other. I just know the teachers came by and had to like explain to my grandma what I was up to. And then my grandma told my dad. And then my dad went off and had me have a lecture from one of his friends about how I have to wait till I'm 19 till I have a boyfriend. I was like 4 or 5. Anyways. And that was pretty fun for me. So hopping forward a decade, when I'm like 15 and I have like an adult kiss, I was like, wow, that was fun. The curiosity that kicked in had my brain going on like 50 miles an hour, just curiosity of like, I didn't know, I just knew that I was like definitely like verging on orgasm, and it was like, holy cow, how did that happen? The curiosity kicked in, and then everything goes still for another year, and then I run into the guy again because he was living in another province. I live in Canada and I live in Ontario. He lived in Winnipeg, and the curiosity kicked in and I was super curious. So I wanted to like know, what did things feel like? And I didn't have a lot of like knowledge at the time about how do you consent to things? I guess you just like lean in. You don't have to say yes. Now, looking back, I'm like, I think there should be discussions, and saying yes is very important. And although what teenager is actually going to do that, I have no idea. Maybe my child will, after hearing so many lectures about consent being so important. I don't know. It's something where, when you get curious, what'll happen is you'll start with one thing, and then all of a sudden the hand starts moving, testing things out, wanting to feel things, right? That's part of the curiosity. It's quite natural in us that we would want to explore things and try things. And unless we're absolutely turned off by it, and then we would probably pull back and try and not be part of it. But when you are curious and you are consenting, it can become an exploration unto itself. The hands wander, all of a sudden parts are being touched, things are getting interesting, things feel cool, right? So that can absolutely happen. And then, next thing is like, oh, look, there's a body part. I'm going to stick my mouth on it. That happens too sometimes. And the curiosity goes on, and then all of a sudden other things are happening. But usually curiosity starts with the first step, right? That very first, just like if you're going on an adventure, it takes you to actually have to get started on that adventure for the curiosity to kick in. If you want to go on a road trip, you kind of got to get in the vehicle to start that going. So you get in the vehicle of, having your hormones kicking in, you're feeling horny, and then all of a sudden the curiosity expands out. So when you're in the zone and you're curious, you will naturally probably start to feel things and notice things and want to experience things that you haven't tried before. And if you feel really comfortable, you might even try things that you didn't even know you wanted to try if you're being introduced to them. And if you don't feel safe, you probably won't want to try them. So at all ages and stages, all ages, which is all ages of consent. So depending on what country you're in, but in Canada, age of consent across the board is 18. It used to be 16 and 18, but now for legal reasons, I believe it's all 18 across the board. And we're going to simplify it by just saying that that's what it is. And otherwise you're a minor. And so when you're of age of consent and when you can consent legally, then that curiosity can kick in. And from that as soon as you can start to consent, it starts to open doors. And then your curiosity might get piqued and you might try more things. So to me, curiosity is a very natural thing. If you don't have a natural curiosity in your life, that may have been squashed when you were little. Maybe you had parents who lived in a lot of fear and didn't want you to do things like go explore fairies in the forest. So you didn't, or maybe you just never did anything adventurous because you didn't feel like you were allowed to, and maybe your parents were more punishing. I had a punishing parent, and then I had a very explorative parent. And I didn't live with my punishing parent all the time. And comparatively to that parent's parents, that parent was actually quite free form compared to what those parents were like. So you'll probably see too, like even in your own family, that there are people who are more curious, they live a more curious life, and you can kind of tell how they had an upbringing or they completely rebelled, which is probable too. It can happen. Although sometimes when the fear is big, you don't rebel, you just comply. And yeah, so I don't know where I was going with that, guys, but that happens. So we're talking all about okay, so age of consent is apparently 16, but according to teenagers I know, they've all said that it's 18, and then maybe that's just what they've all agreed that it is. So we're just gonna let them feel that as true. Only because well, yes, I guess age of consent is different than being an adult, which 18 is an adult. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. I wonder, it's curious. I wonder who wrote those things. And anyhow, all right, that's a digression there. So some of the things that you can do to get your curiosity going is just like take your time. Take your time with small things. Like I mentioned, just like tie up your ankles or try a blindfold while having sex. Maybe try other things like hot and cold play, which we've talked about a lot of these things on the show. So you can go back and listen to the so many episodes I've done on kink, probably about a quarter of them. There's probably 100 episodes on kink alone. And some are very specific, some are more vague or broad, I should say. They're more broad. Like this one is more broad, inviting you into how do you, start to be invited into kink and in your own life. How do you invite it into your own life and how curiosity can lead to more pleasure? So yeah, so you can play with blindfolds. You can do anything. Like right now I'm wearing this like fun sort of scarf. It's really cool. Actually, it's got like felted things that look like peacock feathers, but anything can be used as a blindfold. And then you can just see how you feel with the sensory deprivation of different kinds of senses being deprived. You can, hot and cold play. And now my brain is going off on tangents and I'm thinking of things, and take a deep breath and not get too like overworked in my own body right now while that's the thing about having a sex and intimacy show. I sometimes get myself worked up and I'm like, well then, now I know what I want to do. My brain is, and your brain, by the way, is the most erogenous zones of our bodies. You might be like, no, my nipples are. I'm telling you, it's your brain. Why? We have talked about that before, and our brains are where all of pleasure is processed and sends out all the signals to our body to let our body know that it is experiencing pleasure. So one of the things when you're doing kink play is that it's really good to kind of reflect on how you're feeling, what came up, did certain things get triggered, certain things will go on that you might want to dive a little deeper in and explore. So the question then is like, okay, so we know that we need to communicate, we know we need consent, but how do we communicate? How do you actually ask for what you desire? And why do people even want to talk about that? Like it can be so awkward. So why would somebody want to say what they want? Because what if they get rejected too? Like that's scary. And the thing is, communication can absolutely enhance your relationship. It can enhance your intimacy. It can open conversations. It can open things and discussions that maybe will bring up insights about your partner that maybe you didn't know, right? So you might get big reveals about things that they've thought or forgot about in their own life. And then they're like, oh, you know what? I did try that once and I didn't really like it because it reminded me of this experience. And it can be quite healing. So those are really great things to know. And we talked about also with communication, we did kind of briefly bring in the safe words with the red, yellow, green situation. So those are important. So I think if we look at the different ways to bring up conversations, I mentioned the do's, don'ts, maybes list to, say to your partner, I've been thinking lately that I'd like to try some new things. I got this list from this sex and intimacy coach. And how do you feel about going through the list and just seeing where we stand on these things? And then we'll swap lists and we can either talk about it or just read it and talk about it another day. Like, how do you feel about that? And that can really be helpful. So you can also just share a fantasy you have. You could be like, you know what I've been thinking about? I've been thinking about taking you out into the backwoods and spanking you until you have an orgasm. And I'd be like, well then, I will take you up on that, fine sir. However, it's colder right now, and we're also probably coming up to black fly season shortly, so I might wait on that. So then then you might want to ask your partner, like, how do you feel about that? Like, would you be okay with that? And they might not be, and that's okay, because what you've done is open the door, and they might say, you know what, I'm not really okay with taking you into the backwoods and spanking you because of the black flies, or because, it's a little public for me, with drone cameras and Google being able to watch everything. However, the bedroom is good. Are you good with that? And so that might, it might be a negotiation where that happens. So I'm really big on using both verbal and nonverbal communication because my husband is quite hard of hearing. So sometimes you need to look at all cues, and definitely safe words are helpful, but the nonverbal communication can help too. So if somebody is backing away, or like putting their body into like a defensive mode, or trying to like stop you, that would be a no, right? And if they're gagged or something and they don't have the ability to say what they're wanting to say, then reading the body language is really key. So there you can, it depends on the whole situation. I have so many scenarios running through my head of like how and why you might not be able to verbally communicate. You might actually be hard of speech, so you might not be able to verbally communicate that. You might be also hard of hearing, so your partner might not be able to hear that. I don't know. There's so many ways, guys. So look at the body language, use the words, express how you feel. Start it off as curiosity, like, I've been thinking about, or I saw this thing. How do you feel about trying ABCD out? And it's pretty simple in that way to just start the conversation. Okay, we're going to head to our last commercial break. So I realize we need to get on to that break before we finish the show. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. So in this episode, we've been talking about, are you curious? Are you feeling kinky? Are you exploring things? How do you start to explore things? How do you open the conversation? What tools can you use to do that? And we've talked about my do's, don'ts, maybes list, or my yes, no's, maybes list, whatever you want to call that. It's on my website. You can go grab that for free at milicajelenic.com. And so you can find that through MILICAJELENIC.com. Go download it if you want to talk about that list, and also go book a time on my website. We can get on and chat about that. So the big question is, what is the point of all this? Like, what can we gain from getting into the kink zone? Well, to me, one of the things is that it can open a lot of different things. So let's start with, it can start to heal on many levels, whether it's been sexual abuse or, emotional abuse, combination of all. It can help you start to feel empowered. So that's pretty key. And also, it can start to help you learn how to trust others and trust yourself. It can teach you how to play again. And if you don't know how to play, and it's always surprising to me how many adults really don't actually just know how to play. Play is so therapeutic, and it's one of the top ways to actually heal from trauma. So play, just in whatever way, whether it's role play or just playing in general, that great ways to start to heal. So if we're using kink for connection, what it's also going to do is deepen your trust and your bond with your partner. It's going to help you build better communication, because you're going to be talking about things that are pretty, they're kind of risky conversations to have, right? Bringing up the things you desire can feel intimidating. It can feel risky, and it can be incredibly rewarding. So I encourage you to start these conversations with I've been curious about blah, blah, blah. How do you feel about trying that? So play with those and see how that works for you. And then one of the really key things is looking at aftercare. And so after doing all that play, discussing, like, how did you feel about that? Was that okay for you? Did you like it? Sometimes the person just needs to be wrapped in a blanket and given some hot cocoa so they can be, feeling nurtured and loved, especially after like extensive bondage and things can be really helpful, or being on a rack, like you really want to take care of the body too. So aftercare isn't just for like mental aftercare, it's also for the body, in case you need like a rub down, or you need your body to be looked after so that it doesn't feel stressed. There isn't like lactic acid buildup that creates cramping and things. So look after the bodies that you're playing with, and look after your own body as well. And the other things that you can do and gain from using kink for both healing and for deeper connection to your partner, because that's part of, I think a lot of times what people are interested in kink for is they want to try something new because they want to be able to connect with their partner in a new way, or partners, many partners, right? So sometimes getting to certain things in a relationship where maybe the healing of past traumas is coming up, and you can use things like power and role play to be able to feel more empowered, and to feel more like you've flipped the narrative, and that you're able to change your story, and that the energy doesn't hold on to you anymore. And every once in a while, you might get reminders that there's a little something left to still heal. And that's okay, because you'll probably find the right person to say the exact right phrase that will get you to go, okay, I'm going to try that. And then, or they might give you a tool or a tip, and then you will be able to start to work that through. Our bodies hold on to trauma in so many different ways. And it's so wild that, sometimes we're like, yeah, no, I've really worked on that. I feel fairly resolved, like I'd say 99%. And then something will come up and go, yeah, here's your 1%. Let's go work on that. Oh, now you still have 0.5%. Let's go work on that. So there is something that, our bodies can become very acclimated, I guess is a good word, acclimated to trauma. And they become as if trauma is like the new normal. And we need to reacclimate our bodies to joy and pleasure, and finding different tools to be able to reacclimate your body to that. Part of that is getting your nervous system to relax, and then find joy and pleasure in new things, and be curious, and then be able to expand on that, and then, yeah, relax into it and have more of it. So to me, one of the greatest invitations that I ever really heard was that kink wasn't what I thought it was. And probably and possibly kink isn't what a lot of people think it is. Yes, there are people who are playing kink in those ways that lack communication and lack consent, or even any kind of sense of dignity with what they're doing. Yes.
Thank you for
Clever.
choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach Milica Jelenic. We'll return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to